Hello, and thank you for joining me for today's practice. In this video, we're going to do a variety of warm-up movements right from mountain pose. And the movements that we'll do are probably familiar to you. You've probably done these before as warm-up type movements. But what will make this short practice unique and different is that we're going to take a more therapeutic approach to it by incorporating conscious movement and undulation. So let me explain those two forms of movement in case you're not familiar with them. Conscious movement basically can be defined as any movement that is done slowly, carefully, and intentionally so that the awareness of the mind-body connection is heightened. And you may think, well, isn't that all forms of yoga? And typically, yes, that is true. But the difference or the what makes the way in which we're going to do our practice today and how I like to bring conscious movement into my practices is that I really like to focus on the one descriptor that was used there in the definition, which is slow. So we really move slowly, and by moving very slowly, we're able to be especially intentional. And when I say slow, I mean slow-mo slow, and you'll get a taste of it here in a little bit. But it's that extreme slow movement that allows us to catch all of those nooks and crannies and those areas where there may be some resistance deep within our connective tissue that we typically would just blow by moving not even necessarily fast, but just moving like we normally move. So that's why it's really important that when we apply conscious movement in the way that I'm suggesting, that it's done extremely slowly. And again, you'll get a taste of this here in a little bit, so you'll know what I'm talking about. And then the second thing is undulation. And undulation is basically a type of movement where we allow the body to lead the movement rather than the mind. And it helps promote fluidity in our movement and fluidity at the joints. So typically, when we're moving, we tend to move habitually. The mind takes over and it takes us into our patterns of movement, movement that is repetitive, that is familiar. And with undulation, what we're practicing is really paying attention to the body's desire for the movement and where the body wants to go with the movement or not go with the movement. And so that allows us to go outside of our comfort zone, maybe, and our familiarity with the movement. And it causes the body to now experience different types of movement that we typically don't do. So the combination of the conscious movement in that very slow fashion, along with the undulation, is going to provide us with a very accessible practice and also a very therapeutic experience. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start in mountain pose, as I mentioned earlier. So bring your feet about hip width distance, hip width distance apart, maybe slightly wider if that feels better to you. And the other option here is to stand near a wall. So if you have any issues with balance, or if you're a little unsure of some of these movements that we're going to do, because some of them will be unfamiliar to you, might throw you off, by all means, feel free to do this near a wall so that you have the ability to kind of bring that hand up if you need to at any point where you feel like you might lose your balance. But otherwise, we're going to just find our even weight through our feet. I always love to lift my toes up and kind of move them around and then plant my weight evenly through both feet, finding the edges of my feet or those tripod points, as I like to call them, the base of the big toe, base of the pinky toes, and the back of the heels. So once I feel nicely grounded through my feet and I feel steady and balanced, let's shift our weight over to the right foot And then begin to just gently begin to roll the left ankle. So we're going to start off with our conscious movement warm-ups, right? So as I was alluding to earlier, we're going to go super slow with this movement. So maybe 2 or 3 times, just notice how slow you can go. I know the tendency will be that you're going to start off and you're just going to start rotating the ankle like you're used to, but really slow it down. Again, think of a slow motion video and what that looks like. And as you're doing that, breathe, of course, nice breaths, and really bring your awareness to the nuances of this movement. Where are you feeling some resistance, some restriction, some tension? And if you find those points, just pause, maybe take an extra breath or two before you resume and breathe into those areas. So we'll do that a few times. And then you're going the opposite direction, the same thing. Nice, slow, conscious movement, really paying attention. So, like, I feel right there, I feel like a bit of extra resistance right there. So I can pause, take a couple of big breaths, and direct the breath intentionally into that area of my foot. And often it'll feel like the body just wants to then continue moving after that big breath. It just naturally wants to go. Good. Okay, so once we've done that a few times in the other direction, we'll plant that foot down, ground into the left foot. Let's do the same thing on the right foot, lifting the heel and just starting off with that nice slow-mo movement here. So really feeling, I've had a couple cracks there. I don't know if you heard them. And then if, again, at any point you feel a little extra tension somewhere that you normally wouldn't become aware of unless you were moving this slowly, you can pause and take those couple extra breaths right into that space, letting it go. And then after you do that 2 to 3 times, we can go in the opposite direction. And it might feel a little uncomfortable to go this slow, but just do your best. Stopping as many times as you need to breathe through some of the kinks that you might be finding. And then after you go a couple times, few times in the other direction, let's bring that foot down again. So once again, reground through the feet. And we're going to continue with our conscious movement. And we're going to do this moving up the body. So bring the hands to those hips. We're going to do little, kind of like the hula hoop. We're going to start off really small though, a really tiny hoop, and then it's going to get bigger. But unlike we would do in the hula hoop, we'd go really fast to keep that hoop up. But this time we're going to go again really slow-mo. And you're going to feel the nuances of this movement, this rotation through the hips, the pelvis. And as you do this, just like we were doing with the ankles, if at any point there's a little, you notice a little added restriction somewhere, like I'm just noticing right there, a little extra tension that I feel as I hit that one spot. So any places like that that you might be feeling, pause, breathe into it, and then gently resume. And you can begin to make this rotation bigger, doing it gradually and continuing to be really slow with the movement. Stopping wherever you need to work out those little kinks, those little catches where the body, when you're really paying attention and breathing and noticing, we can become aware of some of those nuances. And we can become aware of where the body is telling us to just pause for an extra breath or two rather than blowing by it. Awesome. So the next time you come forward, gently stop and let's go in the opposite direction. And again, you might start slow or small, I should say, with you, or you're definitely going slow, but starting small with the movement in the other direction as well. And for me, the other direction doesn't feel as tense, so I might start making it bigger. You decide if it makes sense for you to go bigger with your rotation here as you work through the kinks slowly. Breathing with it. Awesome. Maybe another breath or two, you bring it back slowly back to center. And then find your hips upright. Get your balance once again if you need to, maybe a little back and forth to figure that out. And then let your arms relax and just take a moment to notice how it feels, how the feet feel, how the ankles feel, how the hips feel. And we're going to work our way up into the shoulders. Same type of conscious movement, nice and slow. Slow-mo style, right? So again, we've done this before, I imagine. Rolling the shoulders, rotating the shoulders, but we're going to do it again very slowly, very intentionally. Let the arms hang loosely and feel any restriction through the shoulders. And if you hit a little catch point, a little sticky point, pause and breathe. We'll do that a couple times. The next time you come down, we're going to stop and go the opposite direction. In the same fashion, applying that careful, slow-mo, intentional movement through the shoulders, shaking out the hands. If you start noticing hands getting tight or tense, you start gripping through other parts of the body. Allow yourself to go neutral there. And maybe one more. Shoulders don't feel as sticky today, so that's good for me. And then shake it out a little bit. Let's come back to neutral. One last movement. This time it'll be for the neck. So again, one last conscious movement. And you're going to begin with a very small rotation. So I'm just letting my head kind of go in a circular fashion here, rolling in around or from the neck, rolling in this kind of rotation. And just begin to make it a little bit bigger as you feel like you're able to move through it without any resistance. And try to stay, I kind of started moving my whole body, but I realized that, so I'm going to try to stay focused on just the neck and the head movement, isolating the rotation at the head and the neck. And as that rotation gets bigger, again, noticing those little kinks and catches, especially with the neck. I imagine there could be a variety of those where if you pay attention, I definitely have them. You could pause and breathe through a bunch of them. And normally you might just fly right by. And for me, especially at the neck, I kind of need to pause almost every few inches I go, I have to pause again in this rotation. So the next time your head comes down, whenever that is, let's go in the opposite direction a couple times. And you might lift your head up and go start small again. Small rotation in the opposite direction, just really working out those little kinks and nuances in the cervical vertebra. And you might not feel much. And this is not meant to be a movement where you feel a lot of stretch. This is, again, very subtle. And you may feel stretch or tension, especially because that's what we're looking for, but it just may not be what you're familiar with in terms of the degree of tension or stretch. But even the littlest bit that you might notice, we want to work through that because that's the stuff that is hidden. It's hidden deep in the connective tissue. So pausing where you need to. As I get into the bigger rotation, I'm noticing the need to, I'm catching more kinks, so I'm noticing the need to pause a little more. Maybe one more time, one more rotation wherever you are with this. And then we'll slowly bring that head back to center once again. Take a nice deep breath, maybe close your eyes and just notice your body for a moment. Okay, so now for the second part, which is the undulation movements. And so this is different from what we just did in that we are going to start really tuning in to the fluidity of the body and letting the body really lead as opposed to the mind. So we're going to do the similar movements, but they're going to be very different in how they feel to you. So again, shifting the weight over to your right foot first. Let's begin by rotating the ankle. Now, you don't have to go as slowly as you did with the conscious movement. You're still going to move slow and mindfully, intentionally, but we can be a little bit faster. Hopefully, we've worked out some of those kinks with the conscious movement, so we're actually able to kind of flow a little bit more through that joint. And so after a few times, we're only going to go in the outer direction with this one. And after we do it a few times, then we're going to add the knee. So not only are we moving through the ankle, but now I'm deliberately moving through my knee as well. So I'm working through the knee to kind of move the knee in this circular fashion. And after I do that a few times, then I'm going to add the hip. And now I'm going to also move the hip in this circular fashion. So I'm moving the ankle, the knee, and the hip, undulating the left leg through a rotation here. So it's kind of like a flowing fluid movement. Now just notice where there's some stickiness here. And again, it doesn't have to look like me. Your movement's going to be different. The degree of movement's going to be different, but just focus on letting the body guide you through the movement in this fashion. And now we're going to add the shoulder. So now I'm rotating the shoulder as well, just like the whole left side. And maybe if I let my head relax, my head might move. So there's no right or wrong here. Your body's going to move in this left side rotation however it wants to move. Now, this is not some movement that we typically do, right? So this is exactly the point of this undulating movement, is to get out of our comfort zone and let the body move differently. All right, so then we're going to come back to center, and maybe you just kind of shake it out, find that mountain pose, and take a moment to pause and just notice what you feel. Maybe you feel a little difference from one side to the other side. So just take a moment to breathe and pause. And then, of course, we'll do the other side. So shifting your weight to the left, starting just with that fluid, slow ankle rotation a few times in that outward direction. And then we're going to add the knee. So then working in the movement with the knee, letting your body, bringing awareness to that knee and letting that knee lead you here. And then adding the hip and getting that hip involved in this rotation. The whole right leg now getting involved. Fluid, flowing motion. Whatever it looks like, it's all good. There's no right or wrong here. We're just letting the body do its thing. Adding the shoulder. That entire right side now getting into it, into that full rotation, and let the head be soft so the head just kind of bobbles along with the right side as it feels fit. Not resisting based on what you think you should be doing, but just kind of letting it go, going with the flow. All right, one more time. And then maybe we shake it out. We come back to our mountain pose. Maybe close the eyes if that feels good. And just again, take a couple breaths. Notice what you feel. And then opening the eyes if you had them closed. Maybe you take a slightly wider stance if you want, as we're going to go move up to the pelvic region and move the waist like we had before. But again, not exactly like that, because we're going to move slowly, but not so slowly. We're going to find the flow And just rotate through the hips, finding that size of rotation that feels good to us, that feels fluid, that feels natural. And then just kind of letting the body take over, right? So again, getting out of the head, getting out of the mind of how it should look, how far we should go. Maybe it's a small movement for you. Maybe you're not doing much of a rotation because that's what the body wants right now. That's where it is. Or maybe you're really allowing those hips to flow. Or maybe you're somewhere in between. Or moving from one end to the other as far as how big your rotation is. So once you really allow the body to kind of take over and start listening and letting the body lead you, let other parts of the body get involved. So now I've got my shoulders involved, I've got my head involved, just allowing kind of like a free form movement here that starts with the rotation of the hips and might turn into something more, maybe. And then slowly bring it back to a neutral place where you can pause for a moment and go in the opposite direction and just start off with the hips only, finding that fluid rotation through the hips. And then as you let your body guide you and see what the hips want to do in this other direction, you might again let other parts of the body get involved. Breathe with this. There's no right or wrong, as I said. There's no particular structure or strategy here, no steps. It's really about feeling your way through it, flowing your way through it. Of course, being very mindful of any restrictions that might be painful and not blowing past those. And then slowly let's come back to a nice neutral place. And take a big breath or two, pause, and just feel your body here once again in mountain pose. Notice what you feel. And then if you had your eyes closed, open them up and let's move into the shoulders. So again, find that shoulder rotation nicely grounded through the feet. Reground if you need to. Find those big shoulder rotations. So when I say big, again, yours may not be as big as mine. That's okay. Whatever feels good to you. Find the flowing movement of your shoulders, right? So we start through the shoulders. The arms are loose. Arms are loose, soft hands, arms, elbows, everything's relaxed. And you're flowing through the shoulders. And after a handful of times, you let your body go and you just see what it wants to do. And maybe the rib cage gets involved. Maybe the head gets involved. So the whole upper body might get involved. Maybe the knees get involved as you just let the body take over and what it wants to do, how it wants to flow, how it wants to unfold. And then slowly coming back to a more neutral place where you started. And we'll go in the opposite direction. So starting small, shoulders rolling forward now, rotating forward in the opposite direction. And again, once you get going here, once you find your flow, allow the body to undulate like the waves. The word itself makes me think of the ocean. So whenever I do undulation, I always think of myself in a body of water, whether it be the ocean, a lake, whatever kind of body of water feels good to you. How would you move in a body of water? So just letting, once again, other parts of the body get involved. And then slowly coming back to that neutral place, kind of wiggling your way back there, undulating your way back to neutral. Pausing, feeling grounded, always in between, reground yourself. Find your roots, get steady. Notice what you notice here in mountain pose. Take a few deep breaths. And we'll do our last movement, which involved the neck. So once again, we'll start with that gentle rotation. And again, it's going to be slow, but not as slow as when we were doing the conscious movement, where we were really getting into the nooks and crannies there. This time, it's more about fluidity. And again, hopefully the previous movements helped us work out any kinks, deep kinks, or at least some of them, that makes our movement more fluid. And we let the head roll where it wants to roll. And of course, as we get into it, and as the body starts taking over and guiding us, maybe the shoulders get involved. Maybe the rib cage gets involved, and we start moving the spine as well as the shoulders, as well as the head. What does the body need here in this area? And then gradually and slowly coming back to a neutral place so that we can go in the other direction. So slowly working into the bigger neck movement, breathing. As always, notice if you can hold your breath at any point. Keep that breath flowing. And then again, letting the body take over. Now, even with the undulation, sometimes you might feel like you want to pause somewhere. I didn't mention it earlier, but it's very possible that as you're flowing, you might find a kink or a little stickiness somewhere that you feel like you want to stop and pause and breathe. So if you find that, feel free to do that. And the movement you do in one direction may not be identical to the movement you do in the other direction. Let it be free flowing, let it evolve. As I have said a few times, there's no right or wrong. There's only safe and effective, and that's what we're aiming for. And gradually, we're going to slowly come back to that neutral place. Again, wiggle our way, undulate our way into our neutral mountain pose. A couple of nice big breaths here. Feel your roots, get grounded, get steady. And just breathe, observe. We'll bring our practice to completion today with a few big breaths and some nice sweeping arm movements. So let's inhale and bring those arms up. Bring them to prayer as you exhale down to the heart. And again, twice inhaling and exhaling. Last time, nice big inhale. Scoop up all the energy. Bring it into the hands and exhale it down to your heart space. And just bowing the head gently as you look to your own heart. Feeling that balance through your body. Hopefully feeling some more ease. Feeling some movement of energy through the body as well. I thank you for practicing with me today. Namaste. And so hopefully you enjoyed this experience of conscious movement and undulation. Maybe it was something new to you, and hopefully it was helpful in some way. And if you did enjoy this video, I encourage you to check out some of my others. Also, if you liked the video, go ahead and choose to like it below. Maybe add some comments, give me your feedback. I'd love to hear what you thought of it. And if you'd like to know when I post new videos, go ahead and subscribe to my channel and you'll be able to get notified when I do post new content. I would love to have you share in more of my practices with me. So once again, thank you for joining me today. So until next time, be well.